Chapter 8 of Mag and Margaret, A Story for Girls, by Pansy. Chapter 8 Things Working Together. Mag Jessup was dusting Miss Kate Perkins's room. It was several days since the disappearance of the ring, yet Mag was still slipping about the house in a scared way that went to the hearts of her friends. What with Miss Ordway and Frederick Ainsworth and her daughter Kate, Mrs. Perkins declared she was "at her wits' ends." Her first feeling had been, as she said, to pack Mag off to prison, but Miss Ordway would not hear to any such thing. Moreover, Mr. Frederick, when he learned what had happened, sneered at the whole story, and declared that they might as well accuse him of stealing a ring as to accuse little Mag. He was as certain that she did not take it as though he had been in the room with her all the time. Mrs. Perkins left them both, at last, in disgust, and went upstairs, only to find her daughter Kate fully as positive as the others. " Of course she didn't take it, mother. How absurd in that woman to accuse her !"" Look here, Kate," said her mother, " have a little common sense, can't you? Don't I tell you that the ring is gone, and that she was the only person in the room between the hours that it must have been taken? Except yourself, indeed. I remember now that I sent you up with Miss Ordway's letters. If you keep declaring that you know Mag didn't touch the ring, the next thing you may be suspected yourself. How should you like that?" Kate Perkins laughed. She was so far above suspicion that such a thought could only be amusing. " It would be quite as sensible as the other idea," she said. " Only think of it, mother. Here Mag has been in our house for 3 years. We have had boarders all the time, and she has been in and out of their rooms as freely as we have, and has had 100 chances to help herself to all sorts of trinkets, and was never known to touch so much as a pin that didn't belong to her. She is even silly about it. She has come and asked me dozens of times if she might have a pin, when there was a cushion right before her, and she could have helped herself. Does it look reasonable at all, of a sudden, that she should steal a diamond ring?" " No," said Mrs. Perkins, " it doesn't. I should be the last one to accuse her, if there was anything else to do; and if it hadn't been for the raisins, I don't suppose I would have thought of it. But, Kate, the ring is gone. What has become of it?" " I don't know, I am sure. But look here, mother, you know I didn't take it, don't you? If 40 rings were gone from the house, you would be just as sure as you are now that I hadn't stolen them. Why can't we feel the same about Mag? She has certainly always been honest as I am. I don't think her taking the raisins proves anything. Nobody calls eating a few raisins stealing. Norah eats them herself when she feels like it. I've seen her. And Mag, being in trouble about raisins, would have been less likely than at any other time to meddle with rings." " Kate," said her mother, with severe dignity, " there is this difference between you and Mag. If you had touched rings or raisins, I believe you would have told me so. But what do you think of Mag's denying that she so much as touched a raisin?" Whereupon Kate, the champion, looked troubled. " That is bad," she said. " I did not believe that Mag Jessup would tell what wasn't true. I thought she was to be trusted. You know what she did about going for that ride on Christmas Day? But she is an awfully scared little thing, and I suppose Norah just scared her into a lie, before she thought what she was saying." Mrs. Perkins turned away impatiently. " Scared her into it !" she repeated contemptuously. " I suppose she was afraid Norah would eat her. You talk as foolishly as all the others. I'm sure I don't know what to do with her. I can't have her running to the boarders' rooms, and they missing things." " I'm not afraid of her in my room," declared Miss Kate. " Even though she has told a lie, I would be willing to leave my pocketbook open on the bureau, and feel sure that it wouldn't be touched. Nothing can make me believe that Mag Jessup will steal." Mrs. Perkins had finally gone away feeling more perplexed than ever, and half inclined to be vexed with her daughter Kate for insisting on Mag's innocence. This conversation, however, resulted in making her conclude to wait for a day or two before taking any decided steps about Mag; and, in the meantime, to put her under Kate's special charge, with instructions that she look after her sharply out of school hours. For this reason, Kate's room, which she was supposed to care for herself, was having an unusually thorough dusting. Miss Annie Perkins was away from home on a visit, and Kate had the room to herself. Mag looked up with a startled, half frightened air as Kate entered suddenly. She had not been out of the room 5 minutes, but something in Mag's manner troubled her. The child certainly acted like one who had something to conceal. She sprang back from the bureau as Kate entered, her cheeks painfully red, and the hand that held her duster trembled. " What is the matter? " said Kate, and she could not keep her voice from sounding sharp. " What have you been doing to my bureau? "" Oh, Miss Kate," said Mag, in a voice that trembled, " I hope you will not care. I turned the leaf back to just where it was before. I was looking at your Bible, and I saw such a strange verse that before I thought I turned over the leaf and looked at the end of it. And I told myself but a minute before that I wouldn't touch a thing on that bureau, because you said you didn't want it dusted." Kate laughed. " What an absurd girl you are !" she said. " Why shouldn't you look at an open Bible if you want to? If I were you, I would try to get over that habit of starting and trembling every time any one speaks to you. It makes you look as though you had done something you were ashamed of. I've got to learn a selection to recite in chapel to morrow. That is the reason my Bible is fastened open. What verse did you find that was so strange ?"" That one," said Mag, pointing to the bottom of the page; and Kate, looking, read, " All things work together for good to them that love God." " That is a common enough verse," she said. " I learned it when I was no taller than the bureau. What is there startling about it?" " Oh, Miss Kate, it must be true, and yet how can it be? I'm one of them. I love him, and how could it ever ' work together for good ' to have your mother and other people think that I stole and told lies?" Kate Perkins laughed again, but she looked steadily at Mag the while, as though she would read her thoughts if she could. " Mag Jessup," she said suddenly, " tell me one thing. Did you eat those raisins or didn't you?" " I never did," said Mag solemnly. " I didn't touch them." " Well, I believe you," said Kate with a determined air. " And what is more, I mean to, whatever Norah or anybody says. As to its working together for good, you aren't obliged to understand how it can be, you know. And the verse doesn't say how long it will take. Perhaps, some time, you will find out that it really did do you good in some way." Mag considered this for a few minutes with grave thoughtfulness. " That is so," she said at last, her face lighting. " I may have to wait until I am an old, old woman, but isn't it beautiful to think that some time it will come?" Said Kate, " You are the queerest girl that was ever born, I do believe." What this had to do with the words she had said, Mag did not understand. Kate set her charge at work, ripping the skirt of a dress that was to be made over, and went to her mother's room. Mrs. Perkins was sorting pillow slips, and missing some that ought to be there, and she looked tired and perplexed. Kate entered at once upon a description of the talk she had been having with Mag, and ended with, " I don't believe now that she touched a raisin. You couldn't have believed that she did if you had seen her face. And, if I were you, I should just make Norah tell that she had swallowed them herself, and then accused Mag." Just as she had spoken these words came a knock at the door, and Norah's strong red face appeared. The sight made Kate Perkins's face feel red. She could only hope that her words had not been heard. Whatever Norah's faults, and everybody owned that she had faults, during the 7 years that she had spent with Mrs. Perkins they had learned to trust her word. Her tongue might be sharp, but it was honest. " Can I speak to you a minute, ma'am ?" was Norah's plea. " Yes," said Mrs. Perkins, still counting her pillow slips. " Speak away. You need not mind Miss Kate." But Norah evidently minded Miss Kate. Her face grew redder than ever, and she looked as though she did not know how to begin. " It's about them raisins, ma'am," she said, with an embarrassed laugh. " I was never so beat in my life, I am sure. You see it was this way. Saturday was an awful flustery day, anyhow, and I packed that bowl full of raisins, thinking I'd make raisin cake. Then, when I found how late it was getting, and the things not come yet from the market, I allowed that I couldn't do it, and that I'd just take raisins enough for the pudding, and make white cake that could be got out of the way quicker. So I took a teacup and filled it with the stoned raisins, and put it up behind the china set so they couldn't be picked away. Then I went out and found that heedless Nancy had let the water boil off the chickens entirely, and there was an awful time. And when I got back to the pantry I had clean forgot about putting up the raisins, and so I pitched into that young one. And what is more, I haven't thought of them from that hour to this, until just now when I was moving the china teapot to make more room, and when I came upon that cup of raisins you could have knocked me down with a feather." "I am certainly very sorry," began Mrs. Perkins, her voice all but drowned by Kate, who clapped her hands and shouted, "Good, good! I knew Mag didn't touch them." "That poor child has had a good deal to bear," said Mrs. Perkins. "I supposed, of course, you knew what you were about, or I wouldn't have accused her of taking them." "Oh, well," said Norah, growing irritable, "it hasn't kilt her. I didn't mean no harm, and I shall tell her so. Folks can forget things sometimes, I guess, without being hung for it." "Oh, of course," Mrs. Perkins made haste to say. Norah was much too valuable a cook for a woman with a house full of boarders to quarrel with. "Mag will be glad enough to hear that the raisins are found; and so am I am sure. I did not want to think the poor child was a thief. Though the raisins are the least of her troubles," she added after Norah had closed the door with a little bang and tramped downstairs. "If the ring had been found instead of the cup of raisins I should be more glad." "I shouldn't," said Kate positively. "The raisins were the first things, mother, and now that they are found, it makes it all the clearer that she did not touch the ring. I don't believe she would tell the least little bit of a lie to save herself from going off with a policeman to prison this minute. And she is nearly scared out of her senses at the thought of it, too." "Mag seems to have bewitched you," said Mrs. Perkins. The next moment both were startled by a scream that seemed to come from Miss Ordway's room. "Dear me!" said Mrs. Perkins. "What has happened now? We seem to have all sorts of things happening to us nowadays. Run, Kate, and see what is the matter." "It is nothing dreadful," said Kate. "She screamed as though she was surprised, not frightened. Mother, she is coming upstairs." Sure enough, in rushed Miss Ordway at that very moment, with a lovely little white wool shawl of delicate pattern trailing from her left shoulder. "Oh, Mrs. Perkins," she said, "how sorry I am, and how glad! Where is that poor little mouse of a Mag? Come here, child, this minute," as Kate Perkins's door across the hall at that moment opened, and Mag's grave little face looked out. "Come and see what a wicked girl I have been to have thought for a moment that you had anything to do with my missing ring. Look, here is the thief." As she spoke she held up an end of the white shawl, and there, gleaming from one of the meshes, lay the diamond ring. "I had the shawl on that very evening," explained Miss Ordway. "I remember feeling a trifle chilly because I had put on a thinner dress, so I wore the wrap down to dinner. I laid it back in the tray of the trunk that night. I remember thinking that it was so very easily soiled that I would not leave it out, but would get something more substantial. And behold, that naughty ring must have caught hold of one of the loops and hidden itself, just to make trouble. Poor little Mag! Your pale face and red eyes have kept me awake nights, though I honestly haven't believed that you had anything to do with the ring's disappearance since we had our talk about it. Now we will have a jubilee over its return. Are you glad, little girl?" "Yes, ma'am," said Mag, with a pale little smile. "I'm very glad that you have your ring again." In her heart she could not help thinking that one might almost as well be suspected of stealing a ring as of stealing raisins. The ring was safe, but she was thought to be a thief all the same. Kate Perkins, who was beginning to understand the queer little girl whose moods she had been studying for the last few days, said suddenly: "I can make her more glad. Mag, what do you think? The raisins have been found, too. Norah was just here to say that she had taken out a cupful and hidden them away, and then had gone off and forgotten all about it, until she came across them this morning." Then indeed did Mag's wan face glow and her eyes sparkle. " Oh !" she said, clasping her small brown hands, " isn't that just too good! Oh, Mrs. Perkins, now you know that I didn't take them, and that I told the truth, don't you ?"" Why, yes," said Mrs. Perkins, " of course. I didn't more than half believe you took them any of the time. I told Miss Ordway that you had never meddled with anything before." I suppose in all that great city it would have been hard to find a happier little girl than Mag Jessup for the rest of that day. Even Norah was kind, and gave her a slice of cake stuffed full of raisins; and Mrs. Perkins herself prepared her dinner plate, and put an extra slice of turkey on it, and in various small ways showed that she wanted to atone to the little girl for what she had suffered. It was to Kate Perkins that the child let out the fullness of her joy. "Oh, Miss Kate," she called, as she was toiling up the stairs that evening, and saw that young lady at the upper landing, " can you please wait just a minute? I want to show you something. What do you think? It has worked together for good already. I didn't have to wait. Everybody is so kind to me. And look at this." She was hugging to her heart a very handsomely bound Bible that was closed with a silver clasp. "Miss Ordway gave me this for my very own," she said. " She wrote my name on it, Margaret Kane Jessup. Isn't that lovely? Oh, you can't think how glad I am; because, you know, I am one of God's servants, and this is the book that tells them what to do. I did not see how to manage without having one, and I didn't think I could ever get it. It is so big." CHAPTER IX.